My guest today is Danielle McLean, co-founder and executive director of Keystone Education Center in Vero Beach, Florida. Danielle and her colleagues just launched Keystone this fall. They are currently serving 17 neurodiverse students ages 9 to 13 with plans to expand to a high school over the coming months and years. And most of, or all of the students are attending Keystone with the help of school choice programs in Florida that enable education funding to follow students to their preferred educational environment. So, Danielle McLean, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thanks, Kerry. It's so exciting to be on the call that I've been listening to for 8 months.
It's so great to have you here. Yeah, we had a chance to meet briefly earlier this year at the Innovative Educators Network conference in Fort Lauderdale. And at that time, you were pre-launch for Keystone. So I'm thrilled to see that you're up and running and serving now 17 students again who are neurodiverse or have other unique abilities. And really, that was the inspiration for Keystone. I know in talking with you, you mentioned that you have two children who have autism, and you were looking for an ideal educational environment for them, couldn't find something that fit your needs. And so, like so many of the education entrepreneurs I interview, you and your co-founders built what you couldn't find. So maybe you could start with what was going on that led you down this entrepreneurial path.
Okay. First, I want to say every idea that I've ever had in this space has come from your podcast or one of your guests. And I would then go on rabbit holes looking at their programs and what we needed to do. So thank you for that. Um, this came about because I have six children. They're actually all neurodiverse, either gifted or on the autism spectrum. And the two you're speaking of, Jackson and Lincoln, were in an incredible public education space for students with autism in our local community. And I loved their experience there. And I just knew once fifth grade came, what next? Like, are we going to just take these amazing teachers and bring them to the middle school? Probably not. Um, in our one of our last parent teacher conferences in October, I sat down with these two incredible educators who are Teacher of the Year district finalists in different years for in teaching special needs students. And I just looked at them with like panic and said, "Where is the best middle school? Like, you tell me." And they just looked at me sadly and said, "We don't know. And we don't know where you should go. And we don't know if we'll even be here next year. We're, frustrated with how our hands are tied in helping these students." And one of the teachers, the male teacher, said to me in very subtle language, "If you were willing to be creative, we would be willing to be creative with you." And I, that was very cryptic to me, but I came home and tried to follow up with him. And he, in fact, did mean if we built something, he would leave. And his colleague, also the incredible teacher of the year district finalist, said the same. So I came away from that knowing I don't have to be the teacher. I just have to pave the way for them and they will come. So
Can I just
ever
pause
since,
you right there,
yes,
Danielle? Because I have a couple of questions. I guess
yeah.
first, why was there this stark difference between the elementary experience that you were really favorable toward and what you expected in the middle school?
That's a great question. So I knew we had a good thing in the elementary school because I had experienced it. So I was brave in the beginning and put them in the kindergarten class, and it turned out to be wonderful because of the teachers. The administration decided to loop those teachers up. So the kindergarten teacher I had that was amazing was my first grade teacher, was also my second grade teacher, was also my third grade, and they kept looping them. So I've never experienced anything other than excellent teachers for these
Mm.
twins. So I knew that the likelihood of finding that in the secondary space was not high. In addition, I had two older kids who went to two separate middle schools because we're equidistant from either. So it didn't really matter. Like, they're going to do well because they're that type of student. They do well in that traditional setting. One went to this school, one went to this school, and I saw them both. And my second child, who had just finished at the public elementary at the public middle school, said to me in tears, "You cannot send my brothers here."
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, "Well, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do?" am I going to homeschool? Like I don't have that credential in me. And she said, she's gifted and she's in all the great classes and she has a great group of friends and she loved her experience there, but she saw the special needs programming and she's like, don't send them here. Like, oh, great. So
Uh,
that's where it kind of came from, that like panic.
wow. So yeah, you felt compelled to really build something that didn't exist, that would serve your children and others in your community. And it must have really been rewarding for you to hear that these teachers wanted to come along with you, that they appreciated your vision. But I'm curious, why were they ready to leave?
Um, First of all, they're very professional. So it took me a long time to get them to tell me all the reasons why. But it basically came down to district demands and curriculum pacing that was not relevant for these special needs kids. They were saying exposure to the curriculum at their age level is what they need, but that's not what they needed. They need to be taught where they are and what they can absorb right then. Just learning about the Aztecs and the Mayans is not really relevant right now to them. So it just was really frustrating because they were great. The teachers were graded and expected to, perform and check these boxes that didn't check the boxes of the students. And so they felt very conflicted about, do I want to be a high performing teacher that checks the boxes of the admin, or do I want to be an effective teacher that checks the boxes for the kids? And why do they have to make that choice? I don't know, but that's where they were.
So they said, if you build it, we will come. And what happened next?
So as I mentioned, I am a huge fan of community and relationships, and I knew I don't want to have this school on my shoulders. I need them to be creating this with me. So I asked if they wanted to meet weekly back in October to start just dreaming and planning and telling me, what do you want in the school? What would you like me to look for when I'm looking at locations? And so they became co-creators instead of just being the hired help. They became the co-founders. And that's why I'm really clear with people, like, this is not my school, this is an our school thing, because I know they feel ownership in their dream. And they've dreamt of creating their own school for years. I haven't. So that was really important to me that they
Wow.
felt, they were involved in all of the decisions.
So that was last October, October of 2023, where you're having these initial conversations. I assume they were still working in the district elementary school at the time,
Yes.
but
Yes.
planning the move. So, when did things sort of start to get real for you? When did you go from sort of these brainstorming conversations in the fall of 2023 to, starting to form the organization and getting ready to launch?
Um, it felt it felt very strange because everything had to happen all at once. So I knew that we wanted to be a nonprofit. It wasn't going to be an ownership thing, and I wasn't going to be anyone's boss. And so we wanted it to be a community thing. I think it became really real when I started having to research the 1023 form and fill out the nonprofit exempt form, and I had to become a lawyer essentially for like 3 months learning all of that, making sure that all of our ducks were in a row for that. Um, it all kind of happened all at once. I started talking to other people who had left the public education space already in our town. I have a friend from church who just launched her own classical Christian private school a year ago. So she was really a great resource for me and mentor. I'm like, I'm running into this. What did you do? What can I do here? Um, and, forming the board was relatively easy because I had parents who wanted to be involved immediately, and there's a demand for it. I knew that I didn't have to do a lot of market analysis about will this be viable in our town. Like I knew that we would have a list of people wanting to come to a place where kids could be a little bit more flexible and have smaller class sizes and their kid, could get the support that they needed. So
And how did you know that, Danielle? How were you so sure there was demand for this?
Just a pulse on the community. I'm in a lot of community Facebook groups and
Mm.
autism mom groups, and even outside of the autism world, just kids with ADHD. They are struggling in those settings as well, and they're not necessarily behavior issues if you just give them like the right support. So I knew from personal friends, but also our fourth founder that we picked up just a month after we started dreaming. was my boy's first speech language pathologist. So when they were 3 years old, they had this wonderful woman, and I hadn't been in contact with her in 10 years, but I called her and said, "Do you remember me? I just want to know if you think this is dumb or not, because you see kids all over the county. Is this dumb?" And she's like, "Oh, I've been dreaming about starting a school for years. Do you need a board member? How can I help you?" And
Wow.
that's where our fourth co-founder came from.
Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so you have the four co-founders, you've set up the organization as a nonprofit, you're confident you're going to have students enrolled. What were you doing kind of in the late winter, spring months of 2024?
Um, I think I know, we were looking at Drexel. You've mentioned them multiple times. I'll let you do that intro, but Drexel Fund is a nonprofit funder for private schools in the nation. And I started emailing with them and asking, like, what do I need to do to check all your boxes? And they were incredible with providing resources and answers for some of my harder questions. We started creating a 5-year plan based off of Drexel's recommendation. So from the beginning, we had 5 years of growth and projection. And then I fell in love with one of your guests, Kanisha Skaggs from SOAR Academy.
Yes.
Um, just incredible. What she's doing is what we want to do. And so even though she's not in our state, um, it somehow came up in my Drexel conversation, and they wrote me a mini grant for $1,000 to go visit her.
Mm.
And I, I mean, my mind was blown, and my teachers' minds were blown, because they were like, these random strangers are investing in us to go visit a dream school that they don't even know us. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. Let's get on the plane and let's go see Kanisha. And then Kanisha was amazing and shared so many resources. And she basically created a little workshop for us the weekend we were there, worked through our dreams and tried to help us kind of hone in on what we wanted to do. Just an incredible experience, and really solidified for the teachers. Wow, we are doing this. Like, it's already been done, and we're just going to repeat the process that works. So that was an incredible early 2024 experience. And then we found out about the INED conference in South Florida, and we went to another validating, edifying experience where we saw lots of other micro founders just killing it. And we're like, wait, we're in South Florida.
Yes.
Like, we're in the
Yeah.
right spot.
You're
Yeah.
part of this. Yeah. This incredible renaissance in education as colossal founder
Hmm.
Shireen Radigan and co-founder of INED talks about all the time. So a great place to be as an education entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so you also decided to launch for ages 9 to 13 as a microschool, technically for homeschoolers, but you operate 5 days a week and are sort of thinking about whether at some point you would actually get that private school designation. There's sort of pros and cons to that. So right now you're operating as a full-time microschool for students who are technically homeschooled, but they come, I believe you said 9 to 2 every
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Right.
But you picked the 9 to 12 or 9 to 13 age range with the idea of moving up to high school. Why start at 9, or what was it about those ages initially that attracted you?
We knew that we couldn't spread the ages too wide to begin with, because we knew our inaugural year needed to be quote unquote easy. Like, we wanted to have
Mhm.
success. And so we wanted to make that a successful year for the teachers, which means don't spread too wide, especially from them coming from a public school setting. They're going to grow into this, but right now they only know what they know. So we decided we'd scoop up this fourth, fifth, sixth grade cohort of kids. Um, and then we stretched a little bit lower than that, because the teachers actually made the recommendation. In our state, we have a mandatory public school reading test that you must pass in third grade, or you cannot proceed to fourth grade. So lots of parents panic in third grade, because they know their child is going to struggle. There's going to be anxiety. There's going to be dread going to school, and all of the pieces that come with standardized testing for kids who don't test well. Um, and then we up to sixth grade, because that's where my boys were going to be. So
Mm.
that's where the spread came from.
So you have the 17 students, you have those two teachers. Are they the only two that are in the classroom, or do you have other aides or advisors?
We do have another full-time ESE teacher in the room.
Okay.
She actually just came as another godsend. One of the students that we enrolled, his parents said, "We've always paid for this teacher to be by his side all day, every day. So if you take my student, this is a package deal. You get a free teacher."
Mm, wow.
So we just, I mean, we that is not normal. We understand that. And we know she could, anytime the family decides to leave the school, we'd be out that teacher, but we never planned to have three teachers. We just happened to. So it's been great.
And are the teachers, especially those two that you brought over from the local public elementary school, are they creating the curriculum sort of individualized to each student? What does the curriculum look like in your school, in your microschool?
So we are building the plane while we fly it.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted to have it very personalized as part of our pitch to families is that we will meet them where they are and we will figure this out. In reality, just because they're fourth through sixth grade, third through sixth grade, doesn't mean they actually are at third through sixth grade. So we actually have 8 different levels of
Mm,
academic performance in our school right now. And so we are just drilling down what that looks like for individualized a curriculum for each of them. So we took from another motivator, inspirer of mine, someone in Miami who has a program. He uses the term ESP instead of IEP. So an education success plan, very similar to an IEP, but no legal ramifications. But we create this ESP with each family member so that the family contributes to what the goals are for the student,
mm,
and the teachers can contribute to what the goals are, what they've seen in the class setting so far. We do rely on technology to help those students pace where they are organically need to grow toward math or reading, but we also work in small groups and we do we use Rock by Rock as a science curriculum, which is project-based learning, which allows students to work at their own pace and together as a group if needed. And so we're exploring a lot, and we probably have 4 or 5 curriculums right now that we utilize all day. And I'm assuming as we grow, we'll probably have 3 times that,
yeah.
you know, and that's hard for teachers to learn a lot of new curriculum all at once, but that's kind of where we are, trying to find
Yeah.
what works for each kid.
How are the teachers responding to that? Are they feeling kind of grateful for the creativity and the challenge of it all, or what are their reactions?
Their personalities are very calm, which is perfect for an ESE world.
Mm,
So there's very little ego in these teachers, which I love and appreciate so much. They work so well together. I think their approach right now is like I think they're still probably a little shocked that they aren't being told what they have to do every
yeah,
day and that they get to choose.
yeah,
But they're responding really well and diving into new things and not afraid to learn what else is out there. But they've never been given the chance to do that for their whole
right.
career. So it's a learning experience for sure.
Yeah, and the families are diving into a new arena as well. Of the 17 students that are currently at Keystone, are they all coming from a conventional school? Were some of them homeschooling prior to Keystone? What is the composition like?
I would say a third were homeschooled.
Okay.
And the other 2/3 had been in a public education setting. So it's a mixed bag. Some of them, the parents are used to being very involved, and it's very hard for them to let go because they've never let go. And for other parents who had kids in public education, we're retraining them to engage and to be part of our community and to get used to hearing from us a lot because we're going to be communicating a lot. So it's
Yeah.
it's really fun, and we're learning from each other for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. So tell us a little bit, Danielle, about how the financial model works, because I know that all of the students are able to attend on some version of Florida's generous school choice programs. But tell us a little bit how that works and what the family contribution is.
So the average amount of our Unique Ability Scholarship in Florida for this age group is around $9,000 to $10,000 per student. So we based our tuition a little bit higher than that because we know psychologically they're way more invested as a family if they're paying for this service and they want to get the best results out of it. So we set our tuition at 11,500. So if the student's getting, $10,000 from the state, they have a little, $1,500 to come out of pocket for, and we allow them to pay that over the course of the 10 months. So it doesn't hit the families too hard. It's just like letting your kid join a dance class, pretty much.
Yeah, and are there any stipulations that go along with that, with those funds? Are there things that you have to do as a microschool or that the families have to do when they're receiving these funds?
No, and I hate to say that because I know your listeners are nationwide and they probably are so mad that that is not the case for them, and it's really not fair. And I understand that. But in Florida, if they have a unique ability, which could be anything from a anaphylactic allergy to seizures to autism to dyslexia, anything like that that they can prove, the state will give them this 9, 10, sometimes way more, depending on how needy the child is for support. There's no stipulation to it. You can use it as a homeschool parent and just supplement all of the curriculum and things you need for your house to be a great homeschool parent. You can use it as a private at a private school. You can use it as at a full-time tutoring center, which is what we are.
Yeah,
So there's really no strings. They can use it as they want.
that's great. Hopefully more of these programs follow Florida's lead in that and provide that maximum flexibility for families to pick exactly what's right for their children. And Florida also in 2023 became one of a growing number of states to implement universal eligibility for all K to 12 students to receive a portion of education funding to
Yes.
attend microschools or homeschooling programs and various other creative schooling options. So great to see so many more families have access to these models. So
Yep.
you started just a few weeks ago this
Yeah.
fall, and I love how earlier you said, we just wanted this to sort of be a quote unquote easy beginning, right? But it wasn't so easy for you, not because of what was happening in the classroom, but more these entrepreneurial barriers, these regulations and burdens that you had to encounter. I wonder if you could share a little bit about that.
Yes. I'm trying to condense this drama. So we started by emailing churches. We knew that was a smart place to start for location. I emailed probably 10 churches. Two of them wrote back, one said no, and the other one was this place. So it again just lined up perfectly because it is it's just a wonderful place. It's got a huge green campus, it's got a playground, it's got our bathrooms, lots of windows and light, and a great spot in town. 2 blocks from a really big new park that just opened for the public. And anyway, great spot. I learned so much about zoning and building occupancy and really red tape that I never wanted to know. My husband's a civil engineer, and that helped tremendously because anything I got in an email form or I read something, I could just run by him and he would say, oh, this means that, or that means this. Um, so that was very helpful. We ended up um, reaching out to the fire department because I learned so much about here are the big hurdles you're going to come up against. One of them being fire code, locally fire code. So I reached out to fire prevention and left messages and emailed them and said, hey, we're thinking of opening this tutoring center at this location. And I gave them the address and I said, would you please come by and look at it and tell me what I'm up against? Is this going to be all right? As a tutoring center. And I was given the response in an email. It's not our job to tell you what you are. When I said we're a tutoring center, does that sound right based on what I described? And this is the address. And they said, it's not our job to tell you what you are. And I said, okay, great. Then I know what I am. I'm a full-time tutoring center. The state tells me I'm a full-time tutoring center. Step Up for Students, our scholarship program, calls me a full-time tutoring center. So that's easy. I called the city. I said, do I need a business license? They said, no, because you're a nonprofit. And I'm like, okay, it's so confusing. Okay, I don't need a business license. Great. The fire department says, you need a business license because you said you're a tutoring center in town. I said, no, I'm a nonprofit. And then they said, oh. nobody like no, none of these agencies talk to each other. It's just very siloed and strange. And anyway, so so I went on with our plans. We started cleaning up the classroom and dreaming about space. We bought $4,000 worth of furniture. We were just so excited. And all of our furniture started arriving, and it was a week before school started. And the fire marshal called and said, "Hey, I just want to make sure we've touched base about this thing that you're starting." And I'm very vocal on social media, so it's no secret that I'm starting this thing in my small town. We raised $44,000 over the summer to make sure that we could start fiscally responsible. None of my co-founders went into any debt whatsoever. We relied on the generosity of our community who knows we need this in our town. To make sure we could start paying our teachers in July and we could pay our rent and all the things. And before we knew Step Up would be a little delayed, as we know scholarships sometimes are. So we wanted all this money to be in place. Anyway, there's no secret that this place was going to be starting education. And so I think he just got a pulse of our Facebook, I don't know, whatever. He called and said, it sounds like you're trying to open in a week. I think we need to have a meeting. And I'm like, oh, okay. What are we meeting about? I bring my two teachers to the meeting because I'm like, I don't know what he wants to say, but he wants to say something about our tutoring center. And he basically said, per the code, you are not a business, you're an education. And that means a whole different list of fire. And I said, no, we don't want to be education. We want to be tutoring center. We want to be a business. And actually, the business language doesn't line up with the fire language. So the business language says this, but the fire language says it doesn't matter. We say this. So a week before school started, we called the church and said, "I'm so sorry. We have to break our lease. We don't know where to go, but we have nowhere to go." And I didn't tell my families because I didn't want them to panic, and we still didn't know what was happening. We found another spot in a strip mall that was going to cost $8,000 a month, and they wanted us to commit to a 3-year minimum lease. If we broke the lease early, we had to pay the full amount regardless. They wanted us responsible for structural damages, and I mean, it was a terrible deal, but it was the only place that was available for us. We were this close to signing that when we got some business, basically just a very wise businessman chastised us and said, that is a terrible business idea. Do not bend to these realtors. They are taking advantage of you. Figure something else out. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we went back to the church and said, we want to play Russian roulette with the fire department. We're going to open anyway and see what happens. I mean, we have been in touch with Yes Legal for 8 months. We don't feel like we are operating in the dark. We feel like we're being taken advantage of a little bit and not being treated fairly, where there are other tutoring centers in town doing exactly what we're doing in bigger, scarier buildings. But no one looks over there. And I'm not going to throw those companies under the bus because I love that they're operating. But he's like, what are the businesses you're referring to? And I'm like, I'm not telling you that. I'm just letting you know that there's great disparity in how you're operating your authority. So anyway, that was touch and go. And he came to the school the first week of school and walked around the building and called a teacher outside to talk to him about how this needs to be resolved or he's going to have to shut us down. And and then I called a senator and said, I think there's some government overreach here. I'm not sure. I don't know. This is not my world, but would you please look into XYZ? And she said, "Oh, certainly I will just see if they need any help clarifying what they're looking at."
And Danielle,
And
you told me that this senator was a friend of yours, a sorority sister of yours from college, that you called up and said, "What's going on here?" And then the
yeah.
senator, yeah, looked into it. And then what happened?
I don't really know what happened. She just told me that their office made a call to the county and just had maybe some probing questions. I don't know. She just said, I made a call over there. I'll let you know if anything happens. We still were opening every day, wondering if today was the day they were going to come and like tell the kids to move outside or put chains on the, we didn't know what was going to happen. They said that they could turn off the utilities if they wanted. I don't know. But anyway, a few days after the senator was so kind to get involved or at least look into it, I got an email from the fire team a few days later saying, upon further investigation, they found something in historic documents that allowed us to qualify for this grandfathered in clause, which was that because this was an education space prior to the fire code being written, we can operate here.
This is just so I don't even know the word. It's
I
like
know, I know,
maddening.
I know.
It's shocking. It's frustrating. It feels so arbitrary that
Yeah,
that this was happening to you, and then you happen to know a connected politician who could happen to make a call. I mean, it just seems just not above board, right? In
I
terms
know.
of the way in which commerce and, a marketplace for businesses should be working in the
Yeah.
United States of America, right? And so, and I know that Florida has been trying to tackle this. I know there was new zoning legislation that recently passed related to microschools. I mean, do you feel like there are sort of opportunities to improve this? Do you feel like there are remedies?
I just feel like it's so big, and I feel like it's such a big problem, like beyond me.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about legislation. I don't operate in those realms. So for me, it feels like a huge problem to tackle. And yet I know that people, they fight for what they want. And then maybe in a few years it happens. I think it's trickling in the right direction. Like the zoning was a big piece of that, a bill that passed, but that didn't affect us. We already knew that we were in the right zone. That wasn't one of our hurdles. One of
Mm,
our hurdles was the definition of educational occupancy in the fire code does not match up with a tiny little school for 16 students where the egress, I mean,
mm,
this is the safest place to be if there was a fire. I could just
yeah.
run outside. Like there it is. I mean, but on paper, the words, the language in the fire code are just behind all of the liberties that we have as educators and edupreneurs. Like we have all these liberties, but we can't run as fast as we want because some of the other pieces aren't caught up. So
Yeah.
I don't know what it takes to change fire code, but that was a huge one for us.
Yeah. And I mean, I talk to founders all across the country who encounter these similar challenges in states everywhere. And I think you're right. It's just that you are all pioneers in this incredibly innovative, emerging schooling space. And regulations and definitions and zoning and occupancy and fire codes just really haven't caught up. They're still looking at a very sort of traditional
Hmm.
definition of schooling. And so
Hmm.
hopefully that will change and hopefully more education entrepreneurs like you share your story and can lead some of that change. But it just makes me think about the founders who would give up in some of these
Yeah.
circumstances, right? Like you were just determined to move forward and as you said, play Russian roulette. But how many founders might be dissuaded from that? How many
Well,
programs aren't up and running because of these issues?
yeah, I would imagine a lot because we reflect on that often that the only reason that we continued was because we had each other, because I married a civil engineer, because I had a senator sorority sister,
Mhm.
like all of because I knew a pastor who kind of knew my husband, so he let us use this space. So it really was like a silver platter founding for us, where
Yeah.
for others it's not. And I would have given up, and I hate to say that, really, maybe I wouldn't have. Ron Maida says I wouldn't have given up, but I'm not sure because if I didn't have all of the support that I had and people championing us, the whole city was behind us. Um, I don't know. It seems very hard. And whenever I run into a micro founder who's just about to start this journey, I panic for them if they don't have a team.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess I mean, is there? It almost seems like there's nothing else you could have done. Like you tried in your pre-launch to make sure that you were addressing fire code and addressing occupancy. Like in hindsight, is there anything else you could have done, or anything else a founder could do to avoid that, or is this just the way it is?
Well, this is not the correct advice that someone should run with, but in my case, in retrospect, what I could have done is not reached out to the fire prevention team to begin with. Because how it works in our town is if they don't know about it, what are they going to do about it? and I didn't know those rules. I thought I was doing the right thing by saying, here we are, come check us out. We want to be on the up and up. We want to
Yeah.
have a lot of confidence moving forward. These teachers are leaving their careers to do this. I want to make sure I'm doing this the right way. Help us, guide us, help us, guide us. And that was not the right thing to do, including reaching out to DCF to say, hey, just making sure you know we're not a daycare. We're over here being not a daycare. And they came back and said, actually, you are. Thank you for letting us know that you're in existence. And I'm like, wait, no. And if I had never contacted them, that's a whole nother thing, but it doesn't, it just proves the point. Sometimes it is best to keep your head low in this pioneering world we are in as entrepreneurs. I would just be cautious who you talk to,
Mm.
depending on what town you're in.
Although it sounds like the fire department found out about you anyway through social media, and maybe even if you hadn't contacted them, they may have still shown up. And we hear from founders elsewhere that that's true. But yeah, and isn't it unfortunate that this is the way it is? Because here you are trying to be very responsible, and it ends up creating these hurdles for you that really shouldn't be there, in my opinion.
Yeah, we joke a lot about we felt like we were actually starting a meth lab the way that we were being treated in our town, but we were actually trying to help special needs vulnerable students get an education they deserve. But it felt like we were doing something very illegal and we were being dangerous. And I understand they have a job and they need to protect their constituents, but it just feels like use a little discretion to see this is not dangerous. Come and see what this is.
Right, right. Wow. Well, at least you are up and running, and at least for
Yeah.
now, these barriers seem to be behind you, I hope. And you're
Yep.
able to continue to serve these amazing students and grow into the high school years. Will you also grow, do you think, lower elementary as well?
We have not really entertained that. I think we're really
Okay.
happy settling on like get some basic academics. There are a lot of good support in elementary schools for special needs students. It starts to taper as you age,
Mm.
and I think the system wants to see you heal from your illness or your diagnosis, and so your support tends to taper off. And so we want to scoop up the kids as that support starts to taper off.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are you hearing from parents and students in your program? What do they think about it?
Oh man, I could cry, but I already did that, so I'll try not to. Um, they're very grateful, especially those who have experienced the traditional public school setting, because they've seen other classrooms and they've seen their child in other classroom settings. And one mom, I'm paraphrasing, but she has told us privately and posted publicly that her student, who is now in fourth, he might be in fourth, fifth grade, um, he has had 6 years of education outside of us, or he's attended, sorry, six different schools. He's been in six different places trying to find something that would support him. The kids that we serve at Keystone are not so low functioning that they can't um, hold a pencil or go to the bathroom themselves. And they're not high functioning enough that they could be just they could infiltrate the gen ed space without being noticed. These are these mid kids who, something's like they're just quirkier and maybe language barriers are there. And so her son, she said she's witnessing a transformation before her eyes on the home front, as well as the academic space. It's the first time in his 6 years of academics that he's not dreaded coming to school. And she says, I keep waiting for the honeymoon to be over, and it's not, it just keeps getting better. He loves coming here. He usually has so much anxiety about attending that he would miss more days than he would attend at his other schools. I'm like, ah,
I'll cry for you, Danielle.
yeah,
Just amazing.
yeah,
Ah, just transformative for the
yeah,
families, for the learners. Well done as an
yeah.
entrepreneur,
I'm
right?
I'm
Well
not in
done.
here, so not well done to me, but for sure, I champion the teachers who
Yeah,
chose this. They went to school for special needs education. Like that's already a unicorn of a person.
yeah. So, what about you now, thinking about your reflections as both a mom, seeing your students in Keystone, and as a founder? What has this last year been like for you?
Very blurry, and I also my family is very proud of what we've done collectively, and it's definitely been a family commitment as my husband is like has to hold down the fort with the other four kids so that I can build this thing with
Mhm.
the for these two. Um, it's very satisfying. I also had this naive thought that once I built it, so I would take this spring and summer and build this school, and then I'd be like, high five, good luck. But I realized that I'm still very much a part of the day-to-day decisions and vision casting and recruiting and marketing and it's daunting to realize like I'm actually here for the next 7 years. I'm not able to just pass the baton to the teachers who are in the classroom because that would abandon them to do the work, the heavy lifting that they're made to teach and they want to
Mhm.
teach. And so the business side of that has to be shared.
Yeah.
And so I'm just realizing that that's going to be a part of our life as a family for a while. And it's exciting. I love networking. I love talking to lawyers who I think they should invest in our school. And I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm excited to dive into like if you put a podcast out, Kerry, I am your first viewer. So there's never there's never a moment where I'm washing the dishes and I'm not also listening to education evolution and curriculum explanations and things like that. So it's exciting for me because I have a very uh, defined purpose right now.
Amazing. And your children at Keystone, how's it working
Um,
out for them?
oh, they love it and they get upset if I come and pick them up too early. We've had lots of tears for the day that I came a little bit early. They cried for the next 4 hours at my house. I'm not kidding. 4 hours of trying to regulate them because they had to leave Keystone a little bit early. So I never will do that again.
I hear this from founders and families across the country who have children enrolled in these creative schooling environments, and it's the same thing. I don't want to leave early. I might be sick with a cold and can't go to school, and I'm upset about that. Like, it's just an entirely different way of imagining education. And I think some people don't believe it's possible. But we, of
Yeah.
course, know it's possible. And that's why it's just amazing that people like you are building these incredible programs.
Wow. We are very proud and we hope that there is great growth and we can serve, I don't know, 5 times this many students in the next 5 years, but we will need another battleground for more space. This church doesn't have the space for us to grow. So we will be already looking at, what's next.
And maybe additional regulatory challenges as you expand too. So will to be continued. But in the meantime, if my listeners and viewers want to learn more about Keystone Education Center and connect with you and follow your amazing progress, how can they do that?
Our school website is keystoneeducationcenter.com. Um, you can message us on Facebook, which is actually just me. If you message the website, it's me. And our Facebook account is the same, Keystone Education Center. We're in Vero Beach. And any way you click connect, I'm on the other end of that. So happy to connect with anybody. I'm very empathetic.
Well, congratulations on your successful launch. I look forward to seeing your growth and impact over the coming years. And Danielle McLean, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you.